Adonna crashed to the arena floor, her body reeling from the brutal blow of Kedu, the fearsome giant. Kedu roared, towering over her. "How dare you think you could defeat me?" He pressed her down with his massive foot, sneering. "Beg for your life, little girl." But Adonna's spirit was unyielding. She reached out, her fingers curling into the dust beneath her, and with a swift motion, flung a handful of sand into Kedu's eyes. The giant staggered, momentarily blinded, his grip on victory slipping. Without a moment's hesitation, Adonna seized her sword and, with all her strength, drove it deep into Kedu's chest. The giant let out a final guttural gasp before collapsing to the ground, lifeless. The arena, filled with cheering crowds moments before, fell into a stunned silence. Royals, kings, and queens from distant lands sat frozen in disbelief. Adonna had done the impossible. She had slain Kedu, the invincible giant, feared by all, defeated by none. And now, it was a woman who stood triumphant. Breathing heavily, Adonna staggered to her feet, raising her blood-stained sword high into the sky. Her voice rang out across the hushed arena, clear and defiant. "Hear me, kingdom of Nri. I am Adonna, first daughter of Chitachi from Minghua, the clan of Ironmakers. And I claim my reward. I seek the hand of King Inyinya in marriage, for I have defeated her champion." Gasps rippled through the crowd, shock written on every face. To challenge the king in such a way was unheard of. Elders rose from their seats in alarm as King Inyinya, her face twisted with rage, stood up. Her voice thundered through the arena. "Seize that woman!" Once upon a time, in a kingdom where warriors battled for glory and honor, there reigned a legendary figure known as King Inyinya. Despite being a woman, she was called king. Her fierce nature led her to victory in every battle, establishing her as the first woman to ascend to the throne. Her deep-seated disdain for men made her the most feared monarch of her time. King Inyinya thrived in chaos. This approach not only made her the wealthiest ruler in the land, but also caused her kingdom to flourish with treasures, livestock, and slaves acquired through conquest. Her most devoted ally was General Chima, a loyal warrior who helped fortify her reign. Despite her ruthlessness, Inyinya was both adored by her subjects and despised by foreign realms. In every territory she conquered, she spared women and children but executed the men. The strongest and most handsome among them were enslaved and forced to fight to the death in her grand arena. After each brutal contest, the victor would spend a night with her, only to face execution with the rise of the sun. General Chima's grand carriage approached the great city gates, heralding yet another triumph for King Inyinya. The captured warriors, their movements constrained by heavy chains, marched in a somber procession alongside cattle and treasures. "Open the gates," shouted a horse rider. The gates swung wide, revealing the jubilant masses beyond. Men, women, and children filled the streets, cheering passionately as they danced and sang the praises of their king. "Long live the king," they called, their voices harmonizing in reverence. From her elevated palace, King Inyinya surveyed the scene, her heart swelling with pride. She stood tall, adorned in ornate armor glimmering beneath the twilight sky. "Welcome, General Chima. Another victory for us. Now, go, wash away the dust of the battlefield, for tonight we shall celebrate." As her loyal general dismounted and led the captured men away, he barked orders, ensuring preparations for the festivities commenced without delay. The captives were taken to a cleansing chamber, where they were bathed and dressed in women's clothing, a cruel twist of fate for these warriors reduced to mere pawns in her perilous game. Among this group was Kofi, a young and handsome man of only 18 summers. He was no warrior, but had been unfortunate enough to be captured on his way to the market. Tears cascaded down his cheeks, confusion and terror danced in his eyes. He was not ready to face the grim fate that awaited him. A sumptuous banquet filled the grand hall of the palace, adorned with vibrant tapestries and lavish feasts set upon long wooden tables. The warriors stood before King Inyinya, each man aware of the stakes they faced. Inyinya rose from her seat, and at once, silence enveloped the room. "Warriors," she boomed, her voice both commanding and cold as steel. "By the 6th market day, you shall fight to the death in the arena for your freedom. 2 choices await you. Fight for your lives and seize your freedom, or refuse to fight and meet your end without a struggle." The weight of her words hung heavily in the air, and the tension rippled through the hall. Kofi, overwhelmed and terrified, fell to the ground in despair. "Please, your highness," he pleaded. "I am not a warrior. I cannot fight." A wicked grin curled upon King Inyinya's lips as she observed his sorrow. His desperation only seemed to amuse her, igniting a flicker of sadistic pleasure. "Take him away," she commanded General Chima, her voice devoid of empathy. "It is forbidden to speak to the king without permission." As Kofi was dragged from the hall, panic consumed him. He could scarcely fathom the grim reality that stretched before him. All around, whispers and murmurs surged among the other captives, for they knew the fate of those who had come before them. In the kingdom of Nri, a fierce and determined warrior named Adonna made her way through the bustling village, her demeanor commanding respect and fear in equal measure. She was an anomaly, a strong young woman unbound by convention, and since the death of their parents, she had been the breadwinner for her younger siblings. Her reputation as a skilled fighter earned her the envy and resentment of many villagers, who whispered behind her back about her stubbornness and pride. "She thinks she's better than us," they would say, gathering by the village stream where they washed clothes and fetched water. Adonna, however, never bathed there with them. Instead, she would keep her distance, shunning friendships and the constraints of societal expectations. All the men in the village knew better than to approach her. Adonna was known to issue a challenge. "Any man who can defeat me, I will consider marrying." But no man had ever bested her in combat, and so she remained unchallenged and alone, harboring a secret buried deeper within her than any of her scars. Adonna returned home late, only to be met with sobs and turmoil. A neighbor clutched her arm, tears in their eyes. "Your brother Kofi, he was captured by King Inyinya's warriors on his way to the market." Adonna collapsed to her knees, her heart heavy with dread. She knew the grim fate that awaited those taken by King Inyinya. None ever returned. The weight of despair pressed down on her, but in that instant, something ignited within her: determination. The following day, Adonna seized her horse and set out for the kingdom of Obogwu, her heart racing with the significant weight of her mission. Disguised as a traitor, she had never traveled this far before, and everything seemed strange to her. The streets thrived with life, and as she mingled amidst the crowd, a sense of urgency gripped her as she formulated a plan to save her brother. While she was walking through the crowd, a firm hand grasped her arm. An elderly woman with wise, probing eyes pulled her aside, beckoning her to follow. Adonna hesitated at first, but something about the old woman compelled her to comply. Once inside the old woman's abode, Adonna felt the air shift. The walls hung with ornate charms and mysterious trinkets. This was no ordinary dwelling. "Sit down, my child," the seer urged, her voice soothing yet filled with an unnerving gravity. "I have waited for so long for this day. You are special, one of a kind. Your destiny is tied to this kingdom. I know you came for your brother, but all this had to happen to fulfill your true purpose." Confused, Adonna pressed, "What is my destiny, and what does it have to do with this kingdom?" "Patience, my child," the old woman whispered as she stared deeply into Adonna's eyes. "You are a warrior, are you not?" "I am, but I need to save my brother before the arena fight begins. He's not a warrior, and he won't survive." The seer interrupted her. "Even if he survives the fight, he will not live another day. The truth is that all the men captured by King Inyinya never return home. This cycle of violence has ensnared the kingdom in darkness, and tomorrow and after will only bring more sorrow." At this, Adonna surged to her feet, her spirit ignited. "I can't lose my brother. I won't forgive myself if I fail to save him." "Stay, child. You must listen," the old woman insisted, her voice firm. "There is still time. Your fate is intertwined with that of King Inyinya. You are destined to help save her from herself before she brings ruin to us all." Adonna recoiled at the thought. "What do you mean? Why would I save your king? She deserves to die for all the innocent lives she has taken." Her voice quaked with anger, and righteous fury radiated from her. The seer sighed, her expression one of deep understanding. "Things are not always what they seem. If you do not play your part, countless lives will be lost. I sense the spirit within you has whispered of your extraordinary purpose. You are not entirely a woman, are you?" Taken aback, Adonna's heart raced. "How do you know this?" she demanded. No one had ever spoken of her secret, the truth she had buried beneath layers of grief and strength. "The spirit does not lie, my child," the old woman replied, her gaze unwavering. "Your destiny is crucial to the survival of this kingdom. You must act tomorrow at the arena fight. King Inyinya is not someone anyone can approach freely. Confronting her without invitation means certain death. But you have to do this, to save her, to save your brother, and to protect the lives of many more who will fall victim if this cycle continues." "I didn't come here to save the king," Adonna shouted, her anger boiling over. "I came to save my brother, and that's all that matters. She is wicked and deserves no mercy. I would take action myself if I had the chance." "Listen," the old woman cried, rising from her seat. "You must realize that your anger, while justified, blinds you. By ignoring your destiny, you condemn not just your brother, but all those doomed to face King Inyinya's wrath. You may be the only one capable of ending this cycle of violence and brutality, but you must embrace your power." "My child," the old woman began, her voice soft yet filled with centuries of wisdom. "You have heard many stories about King Inyinya, tales woven from the threads of her cruelty towards men. But you must understand that there is another side, a story of pain, loss, and love that has shaped her into the ruler she is today." Adonna leaned in, captivated by the old woman's revelation. "Tell me," she urged. "Long ago, in the kingdom of Obogwu, Inyinya was the only daughter of our revered King Ikenga and Queen Oji. She was the beloved child of the realm, raised amidst luxury and joy within the palace walls. But her heart was always drawn to the people. She was spirited, adventurous, often sneaking away to play with the village children. Inyinya had a childhood friend, a boy named Bambi. He became her childhood love and would always come to the village to see him. They shared an unbreakable bond, galloping through the fields on horseback, their laughter ringing through the air. The villagers adored her radiant spirit, a stark contrast to her two older brothers, who remained arrogant and aloof, disconnected from the hearts of the people. Adonna listened intently as the old woman continued. But then tragedy struck. One fateful evening, the kingdom awoke to the horrific news that King Ikenga and Queen Oge had been brutally murdered in their sleep by shadowy assassins. The news shattered the hearts of the people. Obogwu had always been a land of kindness, helping neighboring kingdoms even during their darkest times. Yet, now the storm of chaos loomed overhead. After their parents' untimely demise, Inyinya's brothers, driven by greed and ambition, fell into a bitter rivalry for the throne. Inyinya found herself caught between their battles, her heart heavy with despair. It was then that she turned her sorrow into vengeance to find and confront those who had ripped her family apart. She began to train relentlessly to become a warrior, channeling her anguish into strength. With Bambi by her side, they became an unstoppable force, fighting together in battles and winning the hearts of the villagers once more. But her brothers, Chika and Emeka, grew increasingly jealous of Inyinya's growing power and popularity. According to tradition, only a firstborn son could sit on the throne, and they were intensely aware of a secret written by their father. If Inyinya bore a son, he would inherit the crown, a provision born from a father's foreboding of the impending strife between his sons. Chika, in his ambition, could not accept such a fate. Unbeknownst to anyone, he and Emeka conspired against their own flesh and blood. The unthinkable happened. In a fit of rage and jealousy, they murdered their own parents. Adonna's breath caught in her throat, but the old woman pressed on, her voice trembling with the emotions of the past. Eventually, Chika ascended the throne, but the evil intentions of those two brothers led us down a path of destruction. They imposed harsh taxes on the people, fighting amongst themselves while watching the kingdom they robbed of its joy bleed out. Inyinya, heartbroken, sought solace in marriage to Bambi, and together they welcomed a son, Ifanye, a bright child inheriting the spirit of his mother, playful yet fierce. But Chika and Emeka's envy grew, poisoning their hearts against Inyinya and her family. In a desperate act to maintain their control over the throne, Chika ordered Emeka to poison Ifanye, reckoning that the death of her son would shatter Inyinya completely, and with it, her claim of loyalty from the people. One sorrowful night, the palace echoed with wails as Ifanye, their innocent boy, succumbed to poison. Inyinya's world crumbled before her eyes as the news spread like wildfire. She was yet to recover from the loss of her parent. The loss of her son reopened old wounds. Convinced that treachery lay within the palace walls, Inyinya became blinded by grief and rage. She trained more fiercely than ever, consumed by the singular quest for revenge against those who took everything from her. Knees worn and heart fractured, she isolated herself from everyone, even from Bambi, who could do little more than watch as his beloved was consumed by darkness. A mother's love had transformed into a quest for vengeance, and more than howling. Ever she wanted justice, and she became a figure feared. Her heart hardened against the world that had betrayed her. Chika and Emeka knew killing her son wasn't enough, since she could still give birth to another child. So they planned to sterilize her, so she could never give birth. One night after Inyinya's night training, unknown to her that her drink had been spiked, Bambi found her the next morning in a secluded area in the palace after searching for her with some group of warriors outside the palace. Unknown to him that she was within the palace, the sight of her broke him. After some examination by the physician, it was confirmed that she had been sterilized. At this point, tears never came from her eyes. More than ever, she was convinced who her enemy was. And Bambi, who was in a deeper pain, could not hold his tears, that her beloved will never be able to bear him a child. But he was more concerned about Inyinya's mental health because she had lost everything she cared about. As Adonna listened, she felt a deep churning within her. The story painted a different picture of King Inyinya, one not merely of a tyrant, but of a woman shaped by insurmountable loss, a warrior drawn into bloodshed by the very forces of betrayal and greed that had torn her family apart. "Is this why she is cruel?" Adonna whispered, struggling to reconcile her feelings. "Yes," the old woman responded, her voice a soft lament. Inyinya's heart became a fortress, surrounded by shadows of the past. But within her, the love she once held for her people still flickers in the dark. It is that flicker that you must find if you are to save not just your brother, but the kingdom itself and the innocent lives King Inyinya might claim. Adonna found herself reflecting on Inyinya's past, contemplating the depths of despair that echoed in the queen's heart. This newfound understanding stirred in her a sense of urgency. She needed Drang. As the old woman's words settled heavily in the air, she continued to weave the tapestry of King Inyinya's journey toward uncovering the truth about her brothers. It was a brisk evening when Inyinya's heartache set her on a path of revelation. After Ifanye's death and consumed by the grief she could never have a child, she sought refuge in her father's study, the only place that felt familiar amidst her shattered world. None of the elders had her back. They were only bound by the king's order, and to go against the king means death. While rummaging through old scrolls, seeking anything that could remind her of the parents she lost, her hands brushed against a hidden compartment in the wooden desk. With a tentative breath, she pried it open and found a collection of letters tied with a frayed ribbon. They smelled faintly of cedar, a scent she associated with her father. King Ikenga had written his will not just in one scroll. Inyinya's brother had burnt on Discover. As she unwrapped the letters, she felt an unshakable tremor within her. Each letter revealed the wisdom of her father, and more importantly, his worries about Chika and Emeka's growing ambition. Her breath caught as she continued to read. Alongside declarations of strength for Obogwu, there were articles about the future, specifically those concerning her and her lineage. In a chilling moment of clarity, Inyinya discovered a decree, one that explicitly stated that upon her bearing a son, he would inherit the throne. Inyinya's blood ran cold. This was the key, the root of her brother's treachery. As the pieces clicked into place, memories flooded her mind, illuminating her brother's whispered arguments, their jealous glances towards her and Ifanye. They had never strayed far from their pursuit of power, and darkness clouded their hearts. Suddenly, a rush of anger surged through her. In her pain-fueled isolation, she grappled with the truth, her fists clenching. The revelation dug deep. Chika and Emeka, blinded by their greed, had chosen to destroy their own blood to grasp what they believed was theirs alone. Fueled by a whirlwind of emotions, King Inyinya stormed through the cold, stone hallways of the castle, each step resonating with the fury of her newfound knowledge. The revelation of her brother's treachery ignited a fierce determination within her. She needed to confront them, to reclaim her rightful place as the protector of her kingdom and avenge her son and parents. As she approached the chamber where she knew Chika and Emeka often convened, she paused, her heart pounding in her chest. Quietly, she pressed herself against the heavy wooden door and listened intently. Voices filtered through, tinged with anger and regret. "I told you it was necessary." Chika's voice rose, thick with resentment. "The throne would never have been ours if she had produced a son earlier than we acted. They were our parents, you fool." Emeka spat back, his tone laced with bitterness. "And Ifeanyi was just a child, an innocent child. You think we could go on ruling without them ever knowing what we did? But you're the one who plotted everything, why acting innocent now? Because you're not king, right?" Inyinya's heart raced as she absorbed their words. The anguish within her transformed into ice, hardening her resolve. Inyinya burst through the door, her regal presence flooding the room. "Enough," she commanded, her voice echoing off the stone walls, crisp and unwavering. The brothers turned, taken aback by her fierce demeanor. "What are you doing here, sister?" Emeka asked, feigning innocence, but his posture was taut with apprehension. Inyinya took a breath, swallowing the weight of her grief and the rage coursing through her veins. "You will answer for what you've done, for the slaughter of our parents and the death of my son, and sterilizing me so I would never bear a child. Your ambition has cost us everything, and you're going to pay by blood." Both men exchanged nervous glances, shrinking slightly under the weight of her words. But it was Chika who stoked the embers of resistance. "You think you can intimidate us? We are blood, Inyinya. You cannot challenge us." "Oh, but I can," she asserted, meeting their eyes with unyielding resolve. "I challenge both of you to a fight, a battle to the death. The last one standing will be king. If I fall, you may rule as you wish, but I will not yield to your treachery." The atmosphere thickened with tension, her brothers momentarily paralyzed by the audacity of her declaration. Inyinya felt the power of the ancestors behind her, urging her forward, their whispers resonating in her ears. Emeka scoffed, steeling himself. "A fight between siblings? You would waste no time bringing bloodshed to our family's already tainted name." "It is not I who have brought bloodshed to our family," Inyinya replied, her voice bathed in cold fury. "You chose your path, and now I am forcing you to reckon with your choices. Do you accept the challenge, or are you too afraid to face the consequences of your actions? You die in the arena in payment for what you did, and the kingdom will despise you less, or you kill me and maintain your position as king." "I accept," he said, a smirk returning to his lips. "No one will believe you. You have no evidence unknown to them." Inyinya had discovered the king's letters with his seal engraved on it. "I can finally get rid of you once and for all. You've always been the king's favorite daughter. You can never take away my birthright." Emeka followed suit, his bravado waging war with the flicker of doubt in his expression. "And I am in as well. Let's see who among us truly deserves the throne." Emeka intended to kill Chika in case he survived the arena fight. Inyinya felt a surge of adrenaline pump through her veins as they extended their arms in a pact of savage determination. The day of the confrontation dawned ominously over the kingdom of Obogwu. News of the challenge spread like wildfire of the treachery that being going on in the palace, drawing the people from far and wide to the grand arena where blood would stain the sacred ground. More than anything, the people of Obogwu were rooting for Inyinya. Beside her stood Bambi, her steadfast husband. With a gentle touch, he squeezed her hand, grounding her amidst the turmoil that threatened to engulf her. "Whatever happens, we fight together," he assured her, his voice steady. Together, they marched into the arena, where the sun hung high in the sky, casting an unforgiving light on the sand beneath their feet. The roar of the crowd swelled, a mixture of dread and anticipation, as the brothers awaited them in the center, ready for the battle that was to determine the fate of all. Inyinya steeled her gaze on Chika and Emeka, the weight of her grief and fury intertwining into a singular driving force. Before the clash began, she raised her voice, echoing through the arena, silencing the spectators. "Hear me, people of Obogwu. Today, justice will be served for the betrayals of my brothers. They stand here as the criminals who killed our beloved king and queen, our parents, and who murdered my son, Ifanye, and sterilized me so I would never bear a child. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Bambi stepped forward beside her, his presence a calming anchor. Today we fight for the truth. Today we fight for our kingdom. As silence enveloped the arena, Chica laughed, a chilling sound that cut through the tension. What do you hope to gain, sister? I've always been the stronger one. Do you really believe you and your dear husband can defeat us? Emeka, his eyes darkened with ambition, grinned malevolently. We don't need to kill you, Inyinya, but we will take pleasure in watching you crumble. With that, the fight began. Steel clashed against steel as the four of them launched into combat, the air thick with the scent of sweat and the thunderous pulse of the crowd. Inyinya and Bambi fought in sync, their movements fluid and precise, intertwining as if they were one heart, one soul, determined to reclaim their reign. Chica and Emeka, however, weren't as easy to dismantle. In a flurry of blows, they engaged Bambi first, hitting him with a combination of sheer force and calculated strikes. With every clash, Inyinya could feel their spirits hammering against the walls of her heart. She twisted and spun, aiming for her brothers while trying to protect Bambi from their relentless assault. But in the chaos, the tide turned. While Inyinya's focus was on Emeka, trying to disarm him, she heard Bambi's anguished cry. She turned her head just in time to witness Chica plunge his sword deep into Bambi's chest. A wicked smile on his lips, triumphant, cruel. No, Inyinya screamed, rushing toward her husband, but it was too late. Bambi fell to his knees, shock etched across his face, blood seeping through his fingers as he clutched the wound. Inyinya's world shattered in that moment, the only person she that has stood by her through all her trials, the ground beneath her feet crumbling. With a primal roar fueled by grief and rage, she turned on Chica, who stood there, reveling in the chaos he had wrought. Thinking killing Bambi would break Inyinya's spirit, but instead she became a warrior forged in fire, rage igniting every fiber of her being. With a final, powerful strike, she pierced his heart, watching as his eyes widened in shock before he fell lifelessly to the ground. Inyinya intended not to kill Emeka because she felt she had lost everything, so she knelt on the floor where her husband's body laid lifeless as she cried bitterly. Emeka seized the opportunity and took his sword towards where Inyinya knelt. As soon as he raised his sword, the crowd called out Inyinya to look out and rest. In a desperate final clash, she disarmed Emeka, driving her dagger into him with the same length of sorrow that had enveloped her all day. As he gasped for breath, staring into her eyes, she saw the flicker of remorse, and then nothing as he crumpled at her feet. Inyinya dropped to her knees, the weight of what had transpired crashing down upon her. She cradled Bambi's lifeless body in her arms, tears streaming down her face like rivers of grief. No, 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 she sobbed as the reality of her loss engulfed her. In that day, the arena fight was birthed a graveyard for the remnants of her broken family. The weight of loss mingled with the deep-rooted courage within Adonna, and tears rolled down her cheeks as the reality of her plight sank in. Such tragedy should never have befallen her, Adonna whispered, wiping her eyes. She loved her family and fought for her kingdom, and now she has lost everything. Yes, the old woman replied, her voice raspy but firm, but there is more. Wielding his influence over her, General Chima has blackened her path, fueling her actions. He wants the throne for himself, Adonna. He's been orchestrating her downfall from the shadows, manipulating everything, encouraging her grief so she's blinded, and soon she would turn against her people. Adonna clenched her fists, rage boiling in her belly. How can we help her? She is strong, but she is also vulnerable. It's not enough that she has lost her family. She is being led like a lamb to slaughter by a thief cloaked in friendship. The old woman's eyes sparkled with a mix of wisdom and mischief as she leaned closer. I have a plan, one that intertwines you and King Inyinya. We must expose Chima and give her a chance to reclaim her power. What do you propose? Adonna asked, her heart racing with anticipation. The arena is a stage of honor and strength. If you challenge King Inyinya to a fight, one she cannot resist, timing is everything, the old woman explained, and you'll declare that if you win, you will have one request. You will ask for her hand in marriage. Adonna furrowed her brow, recognizing the gravity of the task before her. But this will be no ordinary fight. What if I fail? But deep down, Adonna knew this was the challenge she had been looking for, and knowing she could eventually have a partner after all this years of isolating from people, she had never understood why the gods had made her the way she is, and for the first time in her life, she felt in place. It felt like Adonna, upon hearing King Inyinya story, had created a special place in her heart for her, and more than anything, she really wanted to look out for her, even though it might lead to her own peril. She is being suffocated by Chima's deceit. This is our chance to breathe life back into her spirit. Without hesitation, Adonna nodded. Let's send the letter. She sat upon her throne, a strange mix of dread and intrigue swirling within her as she read the letter. Is there ever a dull moment in my life? She murmured under her breath, the corners of her lips twitching into a half smile. Her heart pounded with the thrill of competition as she ordered General Chima to prepare Kedu, the giant, for the fight. The arena once again teeming with the people of Obogwu, Adonna clad in her battle armor. Her opponent stood at the other end. Kedu, a mountain of a man, donned in tribal armor that glinted under the harsh midday sun. The spectators buzzed with excitement, murmuring tales of his legendary strength. The clash of their sword resounded in the arena. Adonna avoided Kedu's blows. Brawny fists met with practiced grace. Adonna danced around Kedu's strength. Hear me, Kingdom of Nri. I am Adonna, first daughter of Chitachi from Minghua, the clan of ironmakers. And I claim my reward. I seek the hand of King Inyinya in marriage, for I have defeated her champion. Gasps rippled through the crowd, shock written on every face. To challenge the king in such a way was unheard of. Elders rose from their seats in alarm as King Inyinya, her face twisted with rage, stood up. Her voice thundered through the arena. Seize that woman.